I was actually right before this interview having a conversation with about a dozen or so January 6th defendants, some of whom were saying that, if what we went through woke up a lot of people in this country and got them to see what was going on and change the way they voted, perhaps what we went through was worth it. And, maybe I'll feel that way in time. But all I know is that my life was really good 4 years ago. And I really liked who I was. I liked the trajectory of my career and everything I was doing. And that everything I went through for the last 4 years turned everything upside down and put my life in turmoil. And I don't think that I've found a deeper kumbaya spiritual meaning in all of that yet, but maybe in time.
Well, how are you feeling? Tell us your reaction. Did you think on November 5th, well, in a couple of months' time, this is going to happen? Have you been sort of thinking about this since Trump got elected?
I mean, I've been thinking probably on a daily basis that it was a possibility, and I've been wondering what might happen. But I did not for a moment take for granted that I would be pardoned. I can tell you that. In fact, I was, in order to protect myself, very intentionally planning to not be pardoned. And then if I did get pardoned, it would just be a pleasant, like, wow, which is kind of how it was.
Tell us why you were there, because everyone's seen pictures of what happened on January the 6th. Why were you there?
Okay, but see, even the framing of that, I object. Because, again, what people have seen is what happened on one side of the building. I was not on that side of the building. I was on the east side of the building. And so I was there because I was a scheduled speaker at a permitted event on a stage on Capitol grounds. And I started getting messages that people were going inside the building and that something was happening. So I started shooting a video. And I walked up to the Capitol on the east side, and I walked up to the top of the stairs. And when I got there, the doors to the Capitol were open. Some of the people were pushing their way in. The majority, like me, were standing outside shooting a video. And I stood outside for 8 minutes shooting a video until a man came outside, got on a bullhorn, said they've cleared Congress. Everyone left the building, move out. And I immediately turned around and I left, and I uploaded my video to Twitter. And then I got 2.5 weeks later raided by the FBI and taken to jail and charged.
So you were, and then you did a plea deal because if you don't do a plea deal, there's a fear that you get a more severe punishment.
That's exactly right. So they charged me initially with 2 felony charges and a misdemeanor, and threatened to add a 3rd felony charge of obstruction of an official proceeding. It's absurd, but I mean, I was literally facing something like 30 to 35 years worth of charges for the 8 minutes that I stood outside the building. The government told me that they would drop the felony charges if I would plead guilty to a misdemeanor, and that, but they were also accusing me of standing outside of the building and shouting for go, go, go for people to go in the building, and take it, encouraging people to take a shield from an officer. They would not drop those allegations from my statement of offense, but they were not true. I did not do those things.
You mentioned the fact that there are different parts of what happened that day, and you were not involved in some of them. You've explained exactly what you were doing. Do you think it was a mistake by Trump to not draw a distinction? Because, J.D. Vance, before the election, even a week before the inauguration, was saying, if you've done something like you assaulted a police officer, and we know that people were harmed, state officials were harmed during that day, if you did that, you shouldn't be pardoned. If you were part of the people who are just there not doing that, then you should be. Should you have drawn a distinction between people like you and people who actually committed felonies of aggression against officials?
I don't think so, because for 2 different reasons. The first is that anyone who's paying attention and really understands what's going on. Look, you used me as an example. Well, I know firsthand how dishonest the FBI is being and how dishonest the DOJ is being, because they were in my case. They literally would not allow me to take a plea deal unless I said I did things I didn't do. So I know that firsthand because I experienced it. So that you can't then ask me to turn around and believe that just because the FBI or DOJ says that somebody hit a police officer, that that is true. Now, I know that there are circumstances in which people did have physical altercations with police officers, but most of the people that I've spoken with and had conversations with have all said that the police officers were physically aggressive with them first and that they were reacting in a defensive posture against the police. I don't think that's true in every circumstance, but I certainly don't think it's fair to not pardon potentially hundreds, maybe dozens of people who were accused of violence who did not initiate violence.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting politically because we've spoken to Republicans, even very pro-Trump Republicans, who regard this as a line. Not they wouldn't regard what your circumstances as a line that he shouldn't have crossed, but there are they would say there are some people who have stockpiled weapons or who have fought violently against police, who harm police officers. We've seen the injuries of police officers. That's a line that Trump didn't have to cross, and he chose to cross it. I mean, I'm just interested in you as someone who knows the world. Are you surprised by that? But because some Republicans who I would say are pretty red meat Trumpian Republicans think he's gone too far.
I mean, whatever. I mean, I would. Most of those Republicans, I can tell you firsthand, have not taken the time to listen to anybody. They have not talked to anybody who experienced J6. They don't know why people pled guilty to things they pled guilty to. The entire thing is a mess. But then you look at someone like Donald Trump, who has spent the last 3 years being treated exactly the way the January 6th defendants were treated, being falsely accused of crimes, being dragged into kangaroo courts, being convicted by biased lunatic juries. He gets what's going on. So I think he's not going to sit around and worry about what these spineless Republicans are so terrified about. He's going to do right by the people who are being abused by the justice system, like he was.
Um, and that's one of the reasons he got elected. It strikes us from afar this question of how the legal system, which should be an independent thing separate from politics. I know in America it's more closely connected to politics than it is over here, but do you feel that that was one of the reasons Trump got elected? This idea that people felt there was lawfare being used against him. He was the victim of the justice system, and that's possibly why he's in the White House.
Yeah. I think that all of these tactics that the political left, American political left, used backfired. There are other reasons too. Our economy is in the toilet. Inflation is out of control, and we have surging crime and a huge illegal immigration problem. I mean, there's a number of issues that are impacting people, but I also think that when the people who are screaming authoritarianism and screaming Nazism are the ones rounding people up in the middle of the night and dragging them off to gulags where they're never heard from again and falsely charging them with crimes and forcing false confessions. I mean, like, eventually people are like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense because none of this was happening under Donald Trump. It's happening under all the people who are claiming that Donald Trump is going to do that, even though Donald Trump didn't do that when he was in office.
If you had your time again, Brandon, would you do it again? Would you go there again and go through this again? Because what do you think?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I mean, first of all, I'm too close to it at this moment to find any like deeper hidden meaning that maybe in time will reveal itself. I was actually right before this interview having a conversation with about a dozen or so January 6th defendants, some of whom were saying that, if what we went through woke up a lot of people in this country and got them to see what was going on and change the way they voted, perhaps what we went through was worth it. And, maybe I'll feel that way in time. But all I know is that my life was really good 4 years ago. And I really liked who I was. I liked the trajectory of my career and everything I was doing. And that everything I went through for the last 4 years turned everything upside down and put my life in turmoil. And I don't think that I've found a deeper kumbaya spiritual meaning in all of that yet, but maybe in time.
Maybe in time. Well, listen, Brandon, we appreciate you talking to us tonight. Really interesting stuff. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.